day and night air shows, cutting-edge aviation technology, and thousands of aircraft on display. Feel the freedom with the whole family. Tickets are free for kids 12 and under, and they'll get inspired by hands-on STEM and aviation activity just for kids. Celebrate America this April in Lakeland, Florida. Get your tickets now at flysnf.org. That's flysnf.org.
The St. Petersburg Renaissance Fair opened all 4 weekends of April at England Brothers Park in Pinellas Park. Shop the artisans, enjoy the entertainment, eat a turkey leg while you watch the jousts. There's games and rides for the kids, fun for the whole family at the St. Petersburg Renaissance Fair. Tickets available now at stpetersburgrenaissancefair.com.
Tune in to the Shrink and Wrap Show here on Tan Talk Radio. Our stories and our topics will include, but are not limited to, everyday issues. We're here for you, for our listeners. We want to know what's important to you. So again, don't miss us on Tan Talk Radio. Tune in again, Shrink and Wrap Show. We'll see you then.
The Shrink and Wrap Show at its new time, Thursdays from 4 to 5 p.m. here on the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Hi, I'm Dawn Reese with the Dawn Reese Show, most powerful names in entertainment, every Thursday at 5 p.m. I have so many different segments I'm so excited to share with you, from miracle stories to celebrity interviews with Hollywood connections to travel to local business, promoting your business on the air with me, an amazing opportunity to grow your business. Tune in to the Tan Talk Radio Network, 106.1 FM on Thursdays, 5 p.m. with me, Dawn Reese.
Don't turn it off now. You need this stuff. Tampa Bay's Tan Talk Radio Network.
You are about to enter the arena of real news and factual commentary on the Voice of Reason here on the Tan Talk Radio Network. Now, here is your host for today's program, Gary Gibbons.
Just when you thought that you'd seen it all, just when you thought that Donald J. Trump could not be less of a statesman and more like Kim Jong-un, Trump says, hey, you want to see crazy? All you Christians who got me elected, hold my beer. Trump says to himself, I got a doozy for you. On the holiest day of the Christian calendar, Easter, and in the middle of a war that I started without a plan or clear objectives, I've got it. I'll finally send out a message of peace and harmony and send prayers for our troops to stay safe, something appropriate for the special day of Easter. And so he tweets the following. Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped into one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the effing, although he spelled out the word. Open the effing straight, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah. President Donald J. Trump. Now, I don't know about you, and I didn't have F-bombs on Easter on my bingo card. But alas, here we are again with Donald J. Trump teaching us about the least talked about amendment of our Constitution, the 25th Amendment, which we'll talk about today here on the Voice of Reason. I'm Gary Gibbons, and joining me in the Tan Talk studio today, my co-host first, attorney and former circuit judge Kevin Carey.
Hello, Gary. Good to see you.
And joining us in a few minutes, hopefully, who's stuck in traffic, is attorney Gary Dolgen. So Tuesday at 8 p.m. was the artificial deadline that Trump came up with in his head for Iran surrendering, or he was going to completely annihilate the entire country, all 90 million of them. And he had threatened war crimes of attacking civilians and the infrastructure needed for them to survive, power plants, water plants, things like that. But in an hour before the deadline, he declared a 2-week ceasefire in the war, claiming that we're working a deal, and I'm sure it'll be a deal like we've never seen before, because that's all he ever says. And that's the problem with everything he does. It's completely unhinged. It's like nothing that any of us or our allies have ever seen before. So,
the word unhinged had come to my mind before you said that, Gary. Let me just take a minute to talk about this Easter morning, which is the most, the holiest day in the Christian calendar. Someone said one of the most. It's not one of the most. It is the most, by far the holiest of days, Easter. And he's tweeting at 8:30 in the morning, I guess, rather than being with his family, and certainly not going to church, which he doesn't do. He is unhinged. It's irrational. It's political stupidity. And then you get into the broader question of what's happening in Iran. It's been a complete disaster. Trump, again, he makes these threats. Everything's always in 2 weeks. Let me make a point. Iran never before this unprovoked war started by Trump and unprovoked by anything done by any country and without any support of any ally that was informed about this in any way. Iran had never assumed they had the authority to use this leverage in the Strait of Hormuz.
They'd never closed it before.
Correct. And so, let's use this toy. Let's use this arsenal, which they're now doing. They're now charging. They're playing God there, and it's created, as we talked about last week, a global economic crisis. You've got, not just oil. You've got fertilizer that's been greatly affected by this. He's he has created a global crisis. It's a disaster. It's a disaster, and these Republicans are gutless and not calling him out for it.
Well, when a president threatens war crimes, it causes huge problems in the chain of command. And it's bad when people are talking about invoking the 25th Amendment to have the vice president and the cabinet vote to remove the president from office due to his mental incapacity. Let's listen to what Chuck Baldwin of the Liberty Fellowship outlines happening in the military.
At least 30 generals have refused to execute Trump's orders to commit war crimes and send U.S. ground forces to Iran. At least 30. So far, 12 of them have been fired, including the commander of the U.S. Army Ground Forces. The rest of the generals will also be dismissed. Pretty much every commander who controls ground forces has to go. Ladies and gentlemen, this is pure, unadulterated fascism. If J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio have any smidgen of a conscience or any smidgen of a desire for future political office, they will assemble the cabinet, use the authority of the 25th Amendment to the Constitution, and remove Trump from office. After that, he must be arrested, prosecuted, convicted of war crimes, and sent to prison. We must end the lawlessness of Washington, D.C., and bring the rule of law back to America.
This, as you know, Gary, my dad was in the military. He was a general. So I grew up in this environment of generals. I remember hearing my parents talking times when my dad didn't get promoted. Then when he did get promoted, but I was aware of this process. Never in my lifetime did I ever perceive that this intervention by the Secretary of Defense to come in politically and say, we're not going to make this person a general or a two-star general because they refuse to fire someone. And they, Hegseth and Trump have interjected themselves improperly in this entire chain of command with the military with this result. It's unprecedented and it's horrible.
Yeah, and these generals that have been removed from the advancement and promotion list have served their entire careers, and they've earned these rights to be promoted because of their exemplary work in the military, and to come in and for political reasons to just say, nah, you're a woman, we can't have you on this list, or you're a black man or whatever, and do that. It's just disgusting. It's so at odds with everything that our military has stood for years.
Some of the MAGA people, they seem offended when we talk about that there's a racist, misogynist bent to this administration. And yet, as you just mentioned, Gary, these are women officers, minority officers. So every time they complain about this allegation we make, they come up and do something confirming our suspicions about this.
Yeah. And the this war was everything that's happened is unfolding was predicted many, many years ago. And I heard a clip from Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was a national security expert, especially in that region. And 13 years ago, he outlined everything that General Kane said, to the president before they invaded, which was, if you do this, they're going to close the Strait of Hormuz. It's going to create a global economic crisis, and we're going to be stuck in a protracted, endless war. Well, here we are, and he's tried this ceasefire, but nobody knows what the terms of the ceasefire are, and it blew up yesterday because Israel has no intention of stopping their war, in the region, and they were attacking Lebanon, and now everybody's trying to say, oh, well, Lebanon wasn't part of the ceasefire deal, and it's complete chaos. Everything this administration touches, they break.
Well, that's correct, and the central problem is you've got incompetency and sycophants on the cabinet who refuse to tell this unhinged president what he needs to hear, and I think they just all fear him. It was laughable. You had the acting attorney general yesterday saying how much he loved Trump, and they get up at these cabinet meetings and just it's a love fest. It's something out of the Soviet Union or Hungary. But yes, the military understands this, and no one would have been surprised at this. This is a complete, utter disaster beyond the fact that we're spending billions and billions of dollars to do this. So, I don't know how this is going to end any way other than just a complete lack of any satisfactory response. Trump can get up there all he wants and say this is a victory. It's not a victory in any capacity.
No, and what's interesting is now they're coming out with all the background facts about what happened, the lead up to the war. Remember, as soon as it happened, Rubio came out the first day and said, well, Israel was going to start a war, and so we had to go, and basically saying, they talked us into doing this. And then he had to try to walk that back, and the president tried to walk that back to say, oh, no, we made the decision to go. But what Maggie Haberman of the New York Times wrote an article that's came out yesterday that said, the first two objectives laid out, the Israelis came to the Situation Room at Netanyahu on February the 11th, and he made this pitch about how we can do this stuff, and he got Trump all worked up, about going to war. And he said the first two objectives that they laid out were killing the Ayatollah and crippling Iran's ability to threaten its neighbors. And then the last two were regime change and creating a situation where the Iranian people would replace their government. They'd rise up and do that. And so after he made this pitch, CIA went to work, and they started looking at it, and they said, we think that we can do the first two objectives, but having a popular uprising inside Iran and replacing the Islamic government by a new secular leader were, in the words of John Ratcliffe, farcical. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio translated that, in other words, BS. So Trump ignored that. They were told this isn't going to happen. You may be able to kill their leaders, but you're never going to make them somebody that we can deal with. And so what they've done is they've replaced they had the Ayatollah's son was is now supposedly the leader. They say he may have been injured in that attack and may not be well, but they're more emboldened than ever. I mean, his father and mother and siblings were killed in that raid. So you think he's going to be somebody that's going to be willing to sit down at a table and say, this is fine?
It's more radical now than it was before. No question about that. And keep in mind too, under the Obama administration, Gary, there was an agreement. There was verification. on this nuclear issue. I mean, what Trump would be, who I think is desperate at this point. I mean, he's got no leverage at any point, because what's happened is he said he's going to destroy Iran. This is now the fifth week. They've got the leverage through the Strait of Hormuz. These low cost drones are doing serious damage. What they've shown, Iran has seen they can withstand this assault from the world's greatest power. But the best he could do now, frankly, after all the dying and the wasted money, et cetera, and the destabilization of this world economy, is try and get back somewhere where we were under Obama. We had a plan in place that was working.
Yeah, and that's the sad reality, is that we're never going to get back to a place that was that good before. Actually, I think what they realized is it took 2.5 years to negotiate that, and that nuclear agreement that Trump tore up in his first administration had inspectors that went in there and actually checked on what was happening, and it was working. And he said, "Oh, it's a horrible agreement. I'm going to tear it up, and I'll get a better one." Well, good luck with that now. I think that ship has sailed.
We're in a position now too where I don't believe anything, and I think most credible people don't believe anything that's said from this administration, because they said a year ago we pretty much decimated, was the term they used. And then he was criticizing and disciplining generals who disagreed with him, who said that's not fully the case. We haven't fully decimated their nuclear capacities last summer, and which is contrary to what they're saying now. Well, gosh, they were so close to going forward. Well, what about the fact a year ago you said that you decimated this capability? Yeah, and this ceasefire was supposed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, and Iran closed it again yesterday because of Israel bombing Lebanon. And, that's Iran's closest ally. I think the political aftermath of this is going to be very severe, and it has been. The polls are horrible. The elections by far going in favor of Democrats. I think what's happened with this war, sadly, it's taken this horrible result of deaths and, the debt increasing, that we're going to get, the House is going to go Democrat. I think what's going to happen with this horrible war is it's going to push the Senate to the Democrat majority as well. So there's going to be some accountability come next January. That what hurts me as an American is that we've gone from this position of being the envy of the world, and now we're almost the laughing stock, because our allies look at this madman. Really, I mean, he's really losing it mentally when you're threatening war crimes in tweets, and the stuff that he's saying is just so crazy. And the fact that they don't want to share intelligence with us anymore. They're just, we've lost our leadership role in the world, where they're making Russia stronger. They're making China stronger. They've made Iran stronger. Well, those of us understand Trump is a narcissistic sociopath. The problem we continue to have, and it gets worse, and these politicians are going to pay a heavy price in November, is none of them are saying anything coming out. For example, we're interfering with the Hungary election. We had Vance over there pushing for an authoritarian who's down in the polls. But there were a couple of Republicans coming forward and saying, when was it okay for us to start interfering in other elections? And when, we complain rightly about outside, including Soviet Union, Russia's interference with our elections. So at all these various levels, we're pushing the Hungarian president as if he's some democratic, he's an authoritarian dictator. But Vance is over there acting like he's the next Abraham Lincoln. Yeah, and Trump sent Vance over there in the middle of a war to campaign for Viktor Orban. And then Vance makes the comment yesterday, well, apparently Iran doesn't understand English, based upon their interpretation of this purported 2-week ceasefire. Yeah. So, where do you think this leads on I heard today there are 2,000 ships that have been stuck in the Persian Gulf waiting to get through the strait. Those ships usually, have a situation where they go to another port, and they restock with supplies. And so they may have been there for
planning to make a 7-day trip to Turkey and reload their supplies, and as a result, they're starving out there. They don't have food. They don't have water. They're collecting the condensation from some of the air conditioning units to use to flush toilets and things like that. It's a real problem. When the Strait was working, they could put like 135 ships through in a day.
Well, again, I think we've talked about this before. The Epstein issue was out there. I think in a very cynical way, Trump used his last desperate card was let's drop a bomb somewhere to get Epstein off the front page, which it won't. There are going to be hearings on that. But this war has been a disaster. We've been played by Israel, by Netanyahu, in a very big way, and it's created just huge unrest in the Middle East. People continue to die. It's not a very popular war. The polls show that the people do not support this war. So I don't know who these Republicans, MAGA people, think they're going to be talking about when they run for re-election in a few months, because they're going to get hammered in November. Some of them might, you think, want to stand up and show some integrity and say this is wrong. What's happening?
Yeah, want to welcome Gary Dolgen to the microphone. So, Gary, you have some thoughts on the current situation in Iran?
What a mess. I remember as a 15-year-old kid when American hostages were taken in Iran. In fact, I remember writing a term paper on it that I gave the President Carter. And it is important that Iran is a danger to us and the world, but there was an agreement that was in place that Obama had negotiated, and Trump ripped it up.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, and so he's put us in such a dangerous situation today, and it's just outrageous. It's just outrageous.
Well, who's the on the old Popeye? I'll gladly pay you on Tuesday for a hamburger today. His Trump's card here is 2 weeks. Everything's 2 weeks. He always had some plan to save whatever the issue was in 2 weeks, and that's what he's done again. There's, as you mentioned, Gary, there's not even an understanding of what the terms of the ceasefire are between the various countries.
Well, he did the same thing with the tariffs last year. What is it, Taco, of course, that they're calling him. And I almost wonder if there are people in the administration that know when he makes these pronouncements that they're buying and selling stocks, because anybody who bought the day before yesterday made a heck of a lot of money yesterday, because it was one of the largest stock market increases yesterday. And of course, it's going down a little bit today. It doesn't last. It just I think there's people making money off this.
In and out, grab your profit based upon what? Inside information?
And whatever Trump is getting ready to post on Truth Social.
Well, and one of the things we talked about last week is, where's Marco Rubio? He's our Secretary of State. You think he'd be I think it's probably one of the more competent cabinet members that Trump put in place. He should be involved in negotiation. You don't even see him at all in this process.
Yeah, no. And if you were Vladimir Putin and you were trying to dream up the ideal situation for what would be in the best interest of Russia, this is it. We're basically destroying NATO from the inside, because Trump is picking fights with NATO. Every time you turn, we don't need your help. I'm going to, he mentioned Greenland again. Now it's another distraction to try to deflect from what's happening, how he screwed things up in Iran. But
there are Republicans like Boebert saying, "Look, I'm not going to vote for this additional money when my constituents are the Medicaid is being cut, the hospitals are being shut down, the nursing homes are being shut down, food stamps are being limited, all the things that my constituents care about." It's not about dropping bombs and getting, spending more money in Iran. So there are some Republicans who I think are pushing back about this, but not enough.
I saw a meme on social media in which this gentleman said, "They told me if I voted for Kamala Harris, we would be at war with Iran and gas prices would be through the roof. That's what Trump said what would happen if you voted for Kamala Harris. So this man said, I voted for Kamala Harris, and he was right. It's happened.
Yeah, that was one of the audios we were looking at. That's exactly right. So, well, I don't see what is the end game here, Gary. I don't see, both Garys. You have this kind of 24-hour news cycle, and he makes the threats. He pulls off the threats. He comes across as very irrational. The allies are just staying away. They want nothing to do with this unprovoked war. So it's a day-to-day survival almost. And I don't see where this is going to end except very, very badly.
Well, Iran put forward a 10-point plan of what they wanted. And Trump said, oh, that's a great, framework from which we can work for negotiation. Everybody that's looked at that list says those are all non-starters for any kind of deal that we would do. None of those things were in the previous deal that got torn up. And why would we ever do that? But yet he's already said, yeah, that looks good. That emboldens Iran, stature strategically in the world. We stood up, we took your hardest shot, and we're fine. We now have control of this. We created a toll booth on the strait, and I mean, if you're China, you're thinking, oh, I'm going to get Taiwan. This is going to be easy.
If you're going after Iran, you have to have regime change, or else things are not going to change. They are a danger to us. They're a danger to Israel. So the fact that we're actually trying to do something to limit Iran's capability to continue to be, the terrorist, murderous government that they are, because we want regime change so that the Iranian people can make a better life for themselves. Our issue's not with the Iranian people, it's with the regime. But the problem was there's no thought out plan and no consultation with allies before. Nobody knew this was going to happen. So what's the end plan? Probably Trump's going to come up with some type of excuse and just say, oh, we won and see you later. And meanwhile, we will have achieved nothing.
Yeah, I mean, the answer was never to go to war with Iran. The answer was to do what Obama did, which was you negotiate. We had, as you've mentioned, we've all talked about, you have in place a plan where, you can, there were inspections. And that, so there certainly, we cannot ignore Iran, but bombing Iran was not the answer.
Yeah, and our newer allies in the Middle East are saying, you better not leave. I mean, you started this mess, you kicked this hornet's nest. You can't leave now. We really need you to finish the job, and not leave the mess that you've created. And I agree with you, Gary. I think he's just going to try to walk away. Yeah. So,
well, the question is, what's going to happen in November? It is amazing to see people like Tucker Carlson now, calling him out at last after all these years of just bowing down to him. But of course, look at Republican leaders. Let's look at our Republican senators in Florida. Haven't opened up their mouth at all about that post. A president a few days ago is talking about wiping out a civilization. He's talking about how he wants to help the Iranian people, but then on the other side of his mouth, he's talking about wiping out a civilization. Imagine if Joe Biden had said something like that. They would say he's senile and would need to be removed by the 25th Amendment.
And this is a crazy uncle you'd put in the garage before a company came over. I mean, he's sitting there on Easter morning, just ranting and raving, suggesting, as you mentioned, Gary, war crimes. By the way, there's nothing about it that makes any sense. But again, the silence is deafening from the Article 1 Congress. Where is the Article 1 branch of government to push back? And that's what's going to have to happen after November. My point earlier, Gary, was I think the House will the Democrats will retake the House. And I think because of this bumbling and unprovoked war and the economy is going to get worse, I think the Senate is now very much in play where it wasn't in play 6 months ago.
Well, we have a race in Florida. We have an American hero, Alexander Vindman, who is working, in the national security section of the White House in Trump's first term, who was a whistleblower that led to Trump's first impeachment. He's a Democratic candidate for Senate. The polls show that he is within striking distance now, and people in Florida have the opportunity to elect him and defeat Ashley Moody, who has never once said a word contrary to Trump. She said her job is to promote Trump's agenda. She's basically given up her vote to Trump, and that's the type of person we need to defeat at the polls.
All right. Well, it's time for a break. You're listening to the Voice of Reason on the Tan Talk Radio Network with me, Gary Gibbons, and my co-hosts, attorney and former circuit judge Kevin Carey and attorney Gary Dolgen. It's time for a short break, and when we return, we'll talk about the corruption in this administration, and in particular, how much money the Trump family and our Mideast negotiators are making, especially from cryptocurrency. That and more of the issues that conservatives never want you to talk about.
Are you a writer, inventor? Do you have questions about your intellectual property rights? Well, tune in every Tuesday and Thursday morning at 11 o'clock for Joy on Paper. Once a month, I will have a special guest, the writer's legal eagle, Bill Larson of Larson & Larson, who can answer your questions. Protect your valuable work. Email me your questions to patsy.radio@gmail.com and then listen in every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 a.m. right here on Tampa Bay's Tan Talk Radio Network. That's patsy.radio@gmail.com.
You're listening to the Voice of Reason on the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Tune in to the Shrink and Wrap Show here on Tan Talk Radio. Our stories and our topics will include, but are not limited to, everyday issues. We're here for you, for our listeners. We want to know what's important to you. So again, don't miss us on Tan Talk Radio. Tune in again, Shrink and Wrap Show. We'll see you then.
The Shrink and Wrap Show at its new time, Thursdays from 4 to 5 p.m. here on the Tan Talk Radio Network. And now it's time for the Only a Conservative Could Think It Minute with your host, Ed Golly.
While the president has little regard for the freedom of the press, he craves its ceaseless attention. His need has the quality of addiction. In Washington these days, there is hardly a reporter who does not have the president's cell phone number. It's said that the best time to call is late at night while he's watching himself on TV and posting in his pajamas. He loves to muse aloud, then watches those musings register in foreign capitals and in the markets. Lately, he's been willing to say anything. The war will be over soon, or maybe not. Whatever. Each pseudo-scoop is as ephemeral as a mayfly. But who can resist? Aren't you being entertained? Think about that.
Don't turn it off now. You need this stuff. Tampa Bay's Tan Talk Radio Network.
Welcome back to the Voice of Reason. In the next segment, we're going to talk about how the Trump family's fully embraced cryptocurrency as the best way to enrich themselves. But in case you're doubting this, let's hear it directly from Eric Trump's mouth.
I think above the market cap of Ethereum. It was pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It went parabolic. I'll never forget. We launched this on a Friday afternoon. I look at the price the next day. It was at like $70 or something like that for literally a meme. And just had a lot of fun. Obviously, we were really successful in the NFTs, in the early days. And then we started World Liberty Financial. Everybody knows we're the fastest growing stablecoin on earth right now. And then personally, I'm doing a project called American Bitcoin. Every bit of my heart and soul is in it. We just listed on the NASDAQ. So we mine Bitcoin out of West Texas using some of the cheapest energy anywhere in the world. We mine a lot of Bitcoin. We're doing it at about 50%, of spot prices right now for BTC, and having a great job doing it. So we're going to accumulate. We're obviously mining, and so crypto has become a big part of the portfolio. I was always a hard asset guy. That's what I did. I think you probably know me from building hotels and skyscrapers and golf courses and residential buildings and commercial buildings. And crypto's been incredible. And it came out of us being debanked, right? I mean, because we wore a hat that said, make America great again. A lot of the financial institutions around the country, they were effectively told to weaponize our banks against us. And, I found some of the smartest, greatest people that you'll ever meet in the crypto world. And it is the future. I have no doubt about it. It is the future of finance. And as a family, we're all in. And personally, I'm all in.
So, a lot of people have questions about what cryptocurrency is. Some think it's just funny money and is made up. But it's a digital or virtual currency secured by cryptography, which makes it nearly impossible to counterfeit or double spend. But unlike fiat money, like the US dollar, it's decentralized, meaning it's not issued or controlled by any central authority like a bank or a government. And so it's a peer-to-peer thing where you can trade with other folks. And for years, it was used for illegal activity, money laundering, doing human trafficking, drug deals. A lot of that was part of this cryptocurrency thing. And I think what you're seeing now is the Trump administration and the family in particular have created these meme coins. And you heard Eric Trump say, I was shocked to see that it was, worth $70, the overnight. You're talking about an image on a screen that people are sending money to pay for.
Well, most people don't understand cryptocurrency. I'll be the first to say I don't really understand it either. What I do understand is that it's volatile. And so my wish for the Trump family is that the volatility costs them a price. But my concern is that people follow the Trump family and they may be hurt by cryptocurrency. And we have no type of regulation protecting the unsuspecting.
Well, we're all attorneys, and we've been trained to you need to simplify things. Most people do not understand Bitcoins, cryptocurrency. Although Trump was very critical of this concept before. I mean, another one was 180s. But I think the theme that people do understand, and I agree with you, Gary, I don't understand it very well, is that I think that there's a clear perception that this administration and family is using whatever means possible to enrich themselves and their buddies. And this is just another vehicle to do that. I think that's the theme and perception that we have. Yeah,
and it's been hardly regulated for quite a while until last year. There was finally a law passed to try to do some regulation of it. And there's another law that's pending in the Senate, the Clarity Act, to try to figure out who really has jurisdiction to investigate if there's any monkey business going on with it. Is it the Securities and Exchange Commission, or is it the CTFC, the commodities market?
Well, in other words, there's bipartisan legislation to restrict members of Congress from buying and selling individual stocks. My question would be, why don't they make cryptocurrency part of that legislation? And would that legislation cover people in the executive branch as well?
You don't think the president would sign such a bill, would you, with his family making, the estimates are that they've made $4 billion in a year off of this stuff?
Well, he was pressured to sign the Epstein Transparency Act, which I never would have predicted that he would sign. So if there were overwhelming bipartisan votes in the House and Senate, maybe he would be shamed into signing it. Of course, shaming him is a huge challenge, but he did sign the Epstein bill. I never thought that would happen.
Well, you're right. And then the point there is there political pressure to bear? And I think you saw what happened in the House, where all but one Republican in Louisiana voted for it. There was not even a vote in the Senate. It was just it was done by overall, I forget the term, but it was done by proclamation.
Unanimous consent.
So it would take that type of a political storm, which they're there. Again, I don't know what these Republicans are saying behind closed doors. The silence is deafening in terms of their response of anything. And we have, even on just a separate note, Lee Zeldin, who's the head of what the EPA, spoke to this group, the Heartland Institute, saying, crowing about how he's so happy that we've rolled back all this climate change issue, and it's all just a hoax, and that on that front, on all these fronts, there's just a complete lack of perceiving what reality is. Apparently, Zeldin is also vying to be the Attorney General. As the acting one was saying how much he loved Trump at a cabinet meeting yesterday.
Well, last spring, Eric and Donald Trump Jr. contributed the family name and really nothing else of obvious value to a complicated series of transactions that yielded them approximately 13% stake in American Bitcoin. Eric, who's now listed as its co-founder and chief strategic officer, has become the company's public face. And if Eric and Donald Jr.'s father had lost the election in 2024, do you think anybody would have handed them such a large stake in a cryptocurrency business? He's used that to make enormous profits in this first year. They think just from that alone they made 3.4 billion. Yeah.
Well, if Eric's father had lost the election, his father would be on his way to federal prison right now.
And then the start, it's one thing. It's corruption. There's no doubt this is the most corrupt administration by far in the history of this country. But number two, if this were great economic times like there were in the 90s under Clinton, when we actually had a surplus, which we've had nothing happening with Trump except expanding deficits, as we've talked about. But you've got the contrast of that, Gary, with what's happening with Medicaid cuts and insurance premiums, going through the roof. People are really suffering now. Employment issues are strong. So you've got you're I think contrasting the pain and poverty of all of these constituents with just utter corrupt, billion-dollar influence. Peddling, etc. The contrast to me is just staggering, and I think there'll be again a price paid for this in November by these MAGA Republicans.
Yeah, and Gary, you mentioned the volatility of this, and one reason why it's been a problem in the past is that there was nothing backing up these bitcoins or whatever the cryptocurrency was, and so. They came up with an idea of a stable coin. And a stable coin, unlike a digital currency like Bitcoin, which rises and falls in price, a stable coin is supposed to hold a fixed value in dollars. And so in July, in order to try to boost his, the investments that he was making in this realm, the president signed the first legislation regulating stable coins. And some of the best known examples, one called Terra USD, had turned out to be a Ponzi scheme. But in December, a New York court sanctioned them, and the co-founder of that company or that particular cryptocurrency, and sent them to prison for 15 years. But World Liberty, the Trump company, has promised its stable coin, USD1, will always be worth exactly $1. Buyers can transfer USD1 to move money or make payments, and any holder can redeem that for dollars. So he's tied our treasury bonds to this stable coin that he's invested in, and it's resulted in a huge windfall for them.
Well, if it's stable at $1, how does someone make large amounts of money from it?
It's all, it's when my kids were little, there was a Beanie Baby craze that went around. There were these little stuffed animals, and they would get very popular for a particular one, and they were just the price was going up and up based upon people trying to buy a particular one that was hard to find. It was a supply and demand thing. And they put out books, and my kid showed it to me and said, this little cat that I bought is now worth, $56, and we paid $4 for it. I said, it's not worth $56. if you can find somebody that'll pay you $56 for it, but don't hold on to it thinking that that's going to have any intrinsic value.
Well, that's right. Why would
it's not.
someone want to pay $56 when they can go to a store and buy it for a different rate? Now, if they don't sell them anymore and it's a collector's item today, maybe so.
Yeah.
I think one of the points you've made that's very important is that there's lack of any regulation and understanding of this, and of course the Trumps want that because they don't want there to be any regulation of what they're doing. They just want to maximize their profit.
Yeah, and you've got these countries in the UAE that are contributing money to his Bitcoin or his cryptocurrency, and then expecting things like super chips that we manufacture that are highly desired around the world, and the kind of thing that some people say we shouldn't be sharing with other less friendly countries. So
well, one of the things people should, when you talk about transparency, we still do have a requirement that elected officials and public officials have to file financial disclosure forms, and so any member of the public can look and see what someone's doing. And it would be an interesting thing is to look at an elected official's net worth when they got elected in the office, and then what's their net worth now. And you kind of get a sense, and if there's a huge increase, start asking questions. When the media starts asking questions, that's when people start paying attention.
Well, and I think the important comment made was there is a bipartisan address of this issue, because it's not just the Republicans. There have been Democrats who have left office much richer, and I think you could probably gain a consensus from most Americans that if you spend your career in politics, you have a decent living, you have a nice pension, you have the top health care, but you should not become rich by this. If you want to be a rich person, then politics is not the way to do that.
That's true. Of course, the other thing is you could have a situation where that elected official's spouse is getting insider information and they're buying and selling and becoming very wealthy. That's probably a loophole in the current system.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to see, you mentioned our Senator Rick Scott. He's totally against any kind of ban on trading stocks, as an elected official. He'll go to the mat on that issue because he's made a lot of money.
We know why that is.
While he's been there.
Well, he also is against extending the healthcare subsidies. And then he used to be head of a large health company where he had to take the Fifth Amendment 75 times.
At least. That's all another discussion. Yes, the company that was found.
Well, every time I hear the name Rick Scott, I think of the number 75.
But I do think we can't seem to get a consensus on anything in this country. I think we should, on a bipartisan level, see if we can't gain a consensus on how to address this issue. That I think there is a perception, and I agree with you, Gary, it's not just the candidate, the office holder, it's also the spouse or child. And there are some laws on this. This isn't the first time that this issue's come up, but I think this is an opportunity for us to find some level of bipartisan support to address a problem perceived in a bipartisan manner.
Yeah, and I keep looking at how much money is being made by the people in this administration. You've got the negotiating team. It includes Jared Kushner, who's not an employee or anything official with the United States. He's just there to look out for the Trump family interests and his, financial services company that he got, $2 billion from the Saudis and is asking for $4 billion more. He's made $150 million in fees since he started managing that fund. Steve Witkoff is Trump's buddy who was an investor in real estate. They've been over there in the Middle East trying to make deals on hotels and redeveloping the Gaza Strip and all of these crazy things and when he goes to Russia, Witkoff's being played like a fiddle by Putin. So it's just it's like we have the B team in there trying to negotiate at this point. And I saw where JD Vance insulted the Iranian person that he's going to be negotiating with, saying, "Oh, he must not understand English." How to win friends and influence people, by jumping in there and pissing them all off essentially before you even start.
Well, the cynicism is, and I agree with you, Gary, is that there are not people in place that are capable of doing these jobs. And what Trump created, nominating these cabinet members who clearly were not qualified. Some never even made it out of the gate, like our good buddy Matt Gaetz in Florida, who also should have been seriously sanctioned by the report that came out from Congress. But what it conveyed by Trump is, I don't really care or need any competence in these very highly complex positions, including what you're talking about. I mean, the people negotiating now are not competent to negotiate, and they don't really have an understanding of what it entails.
They're not career diplomats who know what the rules of engagement with people are that you're going to negotiate with.
Because the career diplomats are being terminated, just like in the U.S. attorney offices across the country, the top lawyers are being terminated. They don't care about people who have skills. Trump says he can do it all himself. He wants yes people, but at least finally, people like Kristi Noem and Pam Bondi, they're getting terminated. Maybe not for the correct reason, but they're still being terminated. So that's at least positive news. The only negative side is someone may get picked who's worse, but hopefully, if the Democrats regain the Senate, the confirmation process is not going to be a smooth ride for Trump appointees.
You mean a real confirmation process, so that it's not one like when they asked Pete Hegseth how many push-ups he could do? The Republicans, and when they were asking questions, it was totally embarrassing. And where are they? Why have they not shown up, especially this week, with the crazy stuff that's coming out of the president's mouth, for them not to speak up at all? And in particular, my two senators here in Florida have been, completely silent on all of this stuff, and they shouldn't.
Well, many of them are scared on two levels. One, they're scared for their political life, but some of them are also scared for their actual life and the safety of their families. I remember seeing former Senator Mitt Romney was accosted as he sat in an airport by people. All Trump has to do is do some type of post, and there will be crazy people that'll threaten lives of public officials. That's part of it. I've heard some Democratic senators say when they talk with their colleagues, this is what they're told in private.
Well, in terms of negotiations too, I think both last summer when the bombs dropped and now in February when the bombs dropped, objectively there were ongoing negotiations at that time that were just interrupted. So there's no credibility in terms of, if we go to the negotiating table, the bombs won't just be dropped impulsively, which is what happened both last summer and last month.
Right. They were Iran was angry at, and what I heard was that they didn't want either Jared or Witkoff to come back, because they were telling them one thing, we're going to work through these issues, and either they were lied to by the president, or he just went off half-cocked and decided to start the war without telling them.
Well, it's embarrassing. And then even after that, they're asking, Trump is claiming, Trump is claiming we're negotiating, and they're saying with who? Because the Iranians are saying that's not the case. It's comical, Gary. There's no rhyme or reason to it, and there's no credibility to it. There's nothing that Trump says that I will believe, because I think it's all based on poor information, impulsive action. And good luck trying to get out of this now. This is not going to end well for either him or these MAGA candidates in the next few months. And we'll be left having to clean up this mess come the November elections.
All right. Well, we're coming to the end here of our first hour, but in the second hour, we're going to take a look at a lot of issues, and including why does Governor Ron DeSantis seem so eager to give away state-owned lands to Donald Trump and to the Tampa Bay Rays? All of that and more when we come back on The Voice of Reason to talk about issues that conservatives never want you to hear about.
We're going to have any people call in on that?
WTAN, Clearwater.
FM 106.1.
WDCF, Dade City.
FM 102.3.
Listen.
This is CBS News on the Hour, your home for original reporting.
I'm Deborah Rodriguez. A funeral in Beirut for one of the more than 200 people Lebanese officials say were killed in Israeli strikes yesterday. They have the Iran ceasefire teetering on the brink of possible collapse. Correspondent Elizabeth Palmer reports from Tel Aviv.
Those attacks might yet kill the ceasefire. Iran's deputy foreign minister told British television that Iran is only going to send its team to Pakistan for those talks with the U.S. this weekend to end the war if Israel stops the attacks on Hezbollah. But Israel's prime minister has posted on social media this morning they are going to continue.
Pakistan's prime minister has just slammed what he calls Israel's aggression. Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz in response. A U.S. soldier has spoken exclusively to CBS News' Jonah Kaplan about surviving an attack in Kuwait that killed 6 other American military members on the first day of the war. We've disguised his voice to protect his identity.
What fortifications existed there?
I mean, I would put it in the none category from a drone defense capability.
None. There were no fortifications.
None.
The Artemis II astronauts are scheduled to return to Earth tomorrow night after their history-making loop around the far side of the moon. Pilot Victor Glover.
We have to get back. There's so much data that you've seen already, but all the good stuff is coming back with us. There's so many more pictures, so many more stories. And I haven't even begun to process what we've been through.
Preparations are underway for splashdown off the coast of San Diego. The emperor penguin has been declared an endangered species.
Climate change gets the blame. Dr. Norman Ratcliffe with the British Antarctic Survey says the sea ice the penguins live, hunt, and breed on is disappearing.
It doesn't last as long, it's not as extensive, and that can impact on their breeding success and survival.
Dr. Philip Trathan with the International Union for Conservation of Nature says emperor penguins huddle to survive.
I think that's really a good metaphor for how humans need to be. We need to work together to change greenhouse gas emissions.
Michael Wallace, CBS News.
Average salaries for a Major League Baseball player hit a new record, and a couple of New Yorkers lead the way. The average salary rose 3.4% on opening day to a record $5.3 million. The highest paid player, Mets outfielder Juan Soto, getting almost $62 million for the second year in a row. Yankees outfielder Corey Bellinger's number 2 at $42.5 million. This is CBS News.
I want to know what's going on in the world. I'm Tony. There are big questions that all of us are asking. I want to get you the answers. How are you? I'm Tony DeCopel. Join me on the CBS Evening News.
Sun and Fun is celebrating the red, white, and blue at 52. Join us this April 14th through the 19th as we celebrate America's 250th birthday and 52 years of epic events at Sun and Fun. With the iconic U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds taking over the skies, live country music by Cooper Allen and Thomas Mack.
This ain't her first rodeo.
Day and night air shows, cutting-edge aviation technology, and thousands of aircraft on display. Feel the freedom with the whole family. Tickets are free for kids 12 and under, and they'll get inspired by hands-on STEM and aviation activity just for kids. Celebrate America this April in Lakeland, Florida. Get your tickets now at flysnf.org. That's flysnf.org.
The St. Petersburg Renaissance Fair opened all 4 weekends of April at England Brothers Park in Pinellas Park. Shop the artisans, enjoy the entertainment, eat a turkey leg while you watch the joust. There's games and rides for the kids, fun for the whole family at the St. Petersburg Renaissance Fair. Tickets available now at stpetersburgrenaissancefair.com.
Do you have questions after being injured in a car accident or injured because of someone's negligence? Do you feel overwhelmed or uncertain about the next steps after being injured in a crash? The personal injury attorneys at Peronic, Caulfield, Averill, and Noyes have been helping their injured clients since 1955 and are now on this radio station to provide guidance to you. Listen to FLA Law each Tuesday from 5 to 6 p.m. Let their decades of experience help you and your family. Offices in Clearwater, non-attorney spokesman.
Hey everyone, it is Brandy Joy with the Brandy Joy Joyride. Feel free to hop in and have a good time with us every Thursday from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. This show is brought to you by One Unit, dedicated to bringing people together, letting your voices be heard. And of course, we're here to entertain you, upbuild you, inspire you, and even hear from you. So every Thursday, tune in to 106.1 FM, Brandy Joy Joyride, and we will hear from you and let's have some fun.
Don't turn it off now. You need this stuff. Tampa Bay's Tan Talk Radio Network.
You are about to enter the arena of real news and factual commentary on the Voice of Reason here on the Tan Talk Radio Network. Now, here is your host for today's program, Gary Gibbons.
Welcome back to the Voice of Reason. I'm Gary Gibbons. I'm joined today in the Tan Talk studio by my co-host, attorney and former circuit judge Kevin Carey, and attorney Gary Dolgen. Welcome back, guys.
Hello again.
Great to be here.
Let's start with Poll Watch, Kevin.
Well, what's that famous line? You don't have to take our word for it. We've been saying week after week that these policies are just amazingly unpopular, and the numbers show that. President Trump's approval rating, this is a CNN poll, for handling the economy has fallen to a career low of 31%, reflecting growing pessimism among Americans over the issue that they consistently describe as the most important. Again, we're talking about dropping bombs and war and killing. No one's talking about affordability and people being able to put their kids through school and pay for insurance. Roughly 2/3 of Americans say Trump's policies have worsened the economic conditions in the U.S., up 10 points from just January. And just 27% say they approve of Trump's handling of the inflation, down from 44% a year ago. So this issue of inflation, which by the way, Trump seems to say is not even an issue. He says it's not. It has gone from the approvals from 44%, which even that is below water, to 27%. His overall approval rating has held steady at 35%, 1 point off his all-time low of 34. But there's been notable erosion in his standing with his own partisans. The share of Republicans who strongly approve of his job performance has dropped to 43% from 52%. So even he's underwater with Republicans, which we've talked about many times, how both Republicans and even in independents, and he's really lost standing there. His economic approval rating is down 8 points since January, and just keeps going. I can keep going on and on here, but it's about around 3/4 of Americans say the U.S. economy is in poor shape. Think about that, and that is the one factor. If you're up for re-election, that can make or break you. But 3/4 of Americans say the U.S. economy is in poor shape, up 8 points just from January, with the share calling it very poor up 12 points. Roughly 60% say they expect the economy to be in a poor condition a year from now, the highest share to say so during either of Trump's presidencies. So the message we're conveying apparently is what's consistent with what the polls are showing, Gary.
Yeah, and I anecdotally, I noticed this week, we went out to dinner a couple of nights in the last week, and they were empty restaurants. I mean, the people are struggling and not able to afford to go out or anything like that, because they're spending a lot more on gas, and that's going to filter down to a lot of businesses and really cause a lot of economic stress.
And the 2 points that are a killer for Republicans coming up for this reelection is the point that there's a poor sense of the economy now, and the second point we just noted was the expectation that it's not going to get better in the next 12 months. That's a killer perception for an incumbent politician when there's a perception of it getting worse over the next 12 months.
Well, guys, with all that's been going on, there's been a little stuff going on since we last met a week ago here, but I almost forgot to talk about Pam Bondi getting fired. It happened about an hour after we went off the air last week.
Has she been sending resumes out?
Yeah.
It's funny. I got several people texting me last Thursday afternoon saying, well, did you know about this during the show? And because we were talking about Bondi, and we said, no, we didn't hear about it until after the show.
Yeah, it happened right after that.
I was just wondering if she was filing for unemployment benefits.
Oh, I'm sure there's some cushy golden parachute waiting. But my brother lives around the corner from her in Hyde Park, and he said she's already back. The people have seen her in Tampa. But what's missing are the 3 large black SUVs that used to be parked illegally on Rome Avenue in front of her house.
That has to be a huge come down. I'm sure that Trump, could have ordered an extension of the time for her to get her security detail, but I guess to immediately, she has to drive herself now, I guess.
Well, that he fired her by tweet again. He doesn't ever do anything, with class. But let's listen to what one of our show favorites, Liz Oyer, the former pardon attorney, had to say about the firing of Pam Bondi.
Hey, everybody. So the big news today is that Pam Bondi was fired from her job as Attorney General. She richly deserved this, so let's take a moment to appreciate that. But I just don't want to get too excited, because Bondi's firing is really not going to fix anything at DOJ. Let me explain. I'm Liz Oyer, the former pardon attorney for the Department of Justice. Trump fired Bondi for 2 reasons. 1, she has become a political liability for him due to her utterly incompetent handling of the Epstein files. 2, she has failed to put any of Trump's political enemies in jail. In other words, this was all about Trump's own self-interest. Bondi's firing has absolutely nothing to do with fixing the corruption or the lawlessness at DOJ. And unfortunately, the person taking over for Bondi is Todd Blanche, who is actually worse in many ways than Pam Bondi. While Bondi has been the public face of DOJ in Congress and on Fox News, Blanche has actually been running the Justice Department behind the scenes. He has done some of the dirtiest of the dirty work for Trump's DOJ. He's the one who cut a corrupt deal with Ghislaine Maxwell. He's the one who fired every single DOJ employee who worked on the investigations of Donald Trump. He's also Trump's former personal criminal defense attorney. Blanche is just as devoted to Donald Trump as Bondi was, if not more so, and he seems to be more skilled and more effective in getting things done, which makes him more dangerous. We don't know yet whether Blanche's appointment is permanent or temporary. For now, he's the acting attorney general. Trump could nominate him to serve permanently, but there are also other candidates being discussed, including some real doozies like Jeanine Pirro, the former judge and TV host who is now the U.S. attorney in D.C., and Alina Habba, who was the sham U.S. attorney in New Jersey before a court disqualified her. Another important thing to note about Bondi's firing is the timing. Bondi was subpoenaed to testify in Congress about her handling of the Epstein files, and that testimony is supposed to take place less than 2 weeks from now on April 14th. In theory, she's still required to comply with the subpoena, even if she's out of a job. But some Republicans in Congress are already raising doubts about whether they'll actually enforce the subpoena and make her testify. Trump is essentially offering Bondi to his Republican allies as a sacrificial lamb in the hope that it will make the Epstein crisis go away. It's very similar to what he did with Kristi Noem when ICE became a political liability. I don't want to be a total downer, so let's toast to the end of the Bondi era, and I'll keep you posted on what's next.
It's almost humiliating too. He dragged Bondi to the Supreme Court last week for oral argument, and then as we talked about last Thursday, because it happened the prior Wednesday, where he went over there and he stalks out of there, storms out of there before it's over, and starts blasting the Supreme Court. Calls it a kangaroo court in a tweet on last Thursday morning. But all the while he's dragging her over there, as he's about to fire her, and so the loyalty is a one-way street with this man, and Michael Cohen warned people that as he was heading off to federal prison, which he was. But Richard Nixon didn't go to prison, but his Attorney General John Mitchell sure did.
Yeah.
If you want to, both my grandfathers were lawyers. I think I mentioned my mother's father was actually the Attorney General in New York, and my dad's father was an attorney. But my dad used to always say, when you sleep with dogs, you're going to get fleas. And that's what's happened. If you don't take our word for it, let's go through some names of Trump attorneys who have been either indicted or disbarred or suspended. And I won't go into great details, but Rudy Giuliani was disbarred by the D.C. bar in New York. Jen Ellis has been subject to criminal issues and bar issues. Kenneth Cheeseman, John Eastman, Christine Bobb, Michael Cohen, Cleta Mitchell, Jeffrey Clark, Sidney Powell. You don't need to maybe not listen to us, but you think at some point, as someone said, everything Trump touches dies. This issue about having to testify before Congress, I think she's going to have to go anyway.
Yeah, the subpoena was actually issued to her. It wasn't issued to the Attorney General, whoever
Correct.
that may be. It was issued to Pam Bondi.
And you go back now, look to the chair of the House Oversight Committee, who within 15 seconds was threatening the Clintons, including Hillary Clinton, who had no connection at all to the Epstein matter. So it's going to be awfully hypocritical for him now to say, well, we're not going to push Bondi because she's no longer the Attorney General. So it's going to be interesting politically to see what happens, because that subpoena, I think, is for next week.
Yeah, don't you think that was part of the timing, that he thought, if we get rid of her, then maybe she won't have to go testify, because he doesn't want her to testify either.
Well,
because she knows a lot
that would
she
be
hasn't said yet.
That would be his thinking, but that subpoena applies whether she's in government or out of government. And I think even more, there's more of a reason that she's a private citizen that makes it easier for that subpoena to be enforced. There were news reports, so it's interesting you talk about dragging her to the Supreme Court. He actually told her in the car on the way over to the Supreme Court. So I would love to have been a fly in the limo to hear that conversation. But that's apparently what her
he told her he was firing her.
Yeah,
or?
as they rode over to the Supreme Court argument. So she knew as she was sitting there in the Supreme Court that was her last ride.
Well, how could Pam Bondi be any more sycophantic than she was? I mean, it doesn't do you any good. I mean, and certainly, as was mentioned by Liz Oyer, Todd Blanche is not going to be any better. He'll be worse.
She put this huge picture of him on the Justice Department building.
Yeah, there's a banner.
Yeah, that's what they do in communist countries, where they put the dictator, his pictures all over town on huge banners and pictures, and that's what she did at the Public Justice Department.
Well, we've talked about also beyond the potentially criminal issues and bar issues. There was a bar complaint filed against Pam Bondi from a number of significant people, including two former Florida Supreme Court justices, including Barbara Parente. And the Florida bar, as we've talked about on the show in the past, put that on hold, given the fact she at that time was Attorney General. That complaint has now been amended to pick up other issues which have been perceived as strong violations of the Florida bar. So she's going to be paying a price. Maybe she feels like that the Hobson's choice, it was worth it to pay this price to be Attorney General for 15 minutes. But you wonder about that.
Well, the Florida bar is going to be put to the test because they have disciplined lawyers for a lot less than what these allegations against her are for. So it will be fascinating to watch and see what the bar does about this over the next year.
Well, and again, back to the politics part of it, if the oversight committee, run by Republicans, but it has many Democrats on that committee, including, I believe, Garcia, who's a very strong advocate. How can, when all of those House members are up for re-election, not just some of them, all of them are up for re-election who haven't already decided to not run, which is a high number of MAGA and Republicans have decided not to run because they see what's coming. But how can you, as a matter of politics, argue that we're going to back off Pam Bondi when we screamed to the high hopes about threatening jail time for the Clintons, and they did appear, and they wanted it to be a public proceeding, which it initially wasn't over their objection. It did come out ultimately, and they came out, I thought, very honestly in their testimony. So I don't know how you handle this. It's a problem politically for the Republicans about what you do with Bondi. She's under subpoena. It is a felony to ignore a congressional subpoena. And folks have gone to jail for that, including our good friend Steve Bannon. I believe that may have been a misdemeanor, but Bannon spent four months in federal prison over ignoring a subpoena.
But who prosecutes someone for ignoring a federal congressional subpoena? The Justice Department. And a Justice Department under Trump is not going to prosecute her. Just like the Justice Department under Trump has asked the Supreme Court to dismiss the charges against Bannon when he was found guilty by a jury and has already served his 4 months in prison. So perhaps if a Democratic president is elected in a few years, Bondi could be prosecuted then. I'm not sure what the statute of limitations is on defying a congressional subpoena, but hopefully it's less than 2 years and 9 months.
Well, you're right, Gary.
Or more than 2 years.
But it's hypocrisy, and I do think they're going to pay a price in election year. I mean, the polls are showing that people are paying attention to this. They understand this Epstein issue to some degree, and they understand if the committee is treating people differently based upon their party affiliation. So this Bondi issue, I agree with what you were saying earlier about Trump wanted to just let go of her because it was becoming a political liability to him, which is all Trump cares about. He doesn't care about anything else besides, is it hurting him and his agenda? But it's going to continue to be a problem for that party given this subpoena issue.
Well, one thing we need to keep in mind, we all follow what's going on all the time. The average American who is not that interested in politics, do they know about the Pam Bondi subpoena? Probably not. They know about the Epstein file. That's because that's all over the place. So we always need to be thinking, what is it that the average disinterested person, what's getting through to them? There aren't a whole lot of things that get through to them. Epstein does. What else does? I don't know that the Pam Bondi subpoena is talked about by the average person on the street.
Well, but the Bondi subpoena is a part of Epstein, and the subpoena has to do with Epstein. So
that is true.
So perhaps you're saying that the Democrats need to make clear that this is part of the Epstein problem, because the public does understand Epstein.
They do.
So, but you're right. I think it has to be brought up by the Democrats, and I think they will. They've done a pretty darn good job of it. And Garcia, if you hear Garcia, he's a very strong advocate. He's a ranking Democrat on that committee, and they've been quiet lately. Maybe it's because of the war and whatnot, and Trump has, on a short term, been able to avoid further discussion about Epstein, but it's not going away. And so the next point in the Epstein story is what's going to happen with this subpoena.
We have not heard a lot about Epstein in the last few weeks.
Well, and you mentioned Steve Bannon. I think it's worth noting something there, because what happened there is also incredible. Here's a gentleman he served 4 years in jail for ignoring a congressional subpoena.
4 months,
I'm sorry, did I say years?
Yeah,
that was wishful thinking. It was 4 months, but he also, by the way, was under a serious indictment criminally for felony indictment for fraud tied in with a lot of his shenanigans,
which he was pardoned for federally. He was charged in the state also. Somehow he got a big break in the state. I don't know if you're remember what happened with that.
Well, I know, but we have three lawyers around this table, and here's a gentleman who served his 4 months, kicking and screaming. He spent 4 months in jail. The case is over, and now for some reason he's gotten the Supreme Court to say the case has now been dismissed after he's pled guilty, served a 4-month sentence. I think it's setting up another situation where he's going to want money from the Department of Justice, just like our buddy Flynn, who pled guilty and walked away with $1.2 million 2 weeks ago after a guilty plea.
Peter Navarro, a Trump acolyte, served 4 months for the same crime. I wonder if he's next, if they're going to try and get the cases dismissed against him. Navarro actually got out of prison the morning that the Republican convention started in 2024. So he walked out of prison on that Monday morning, and he was on the podium speaking to the Republican convention that evening.
Well, I don't know. This case kind of caught me, from nowhere. We were talking last week about the when Trump going down to the courthouse on the birth, the being a citizen at birth, the birthright issue, and there's been the issues about tariffs, et cetera. But I don't understand, and maybe you guys give me your thoughts as lawyers. When someone has served a sentence, what jurisdiction does the Department of Justice have, or the court, to dismiss a case where the sentence has been served?
Exactly. This case is finished. Talk about things we've never seen before.
Right.
Someone who is charged, convicted, sent to prison, serves their sentence. That's the end of it. Okay. And he then goes to the Department of Justice, this, crackerjack Department of Justice that we have now, and says, "Hey, can you dismiss my case? You mean the one you just served the sentence on? Yeah, dismiss my case. And if it goes away, then I can sue and get paid like Mike Flynn did." Let's do that.
My question is, couldn't Trump just pardon him and we'd have the same situation, just like the January 6 people who were pardoned? They're trying to get money. So why would the Supreme Court even get involved? The other interesting thing is that the Supreme Court didn't actually dismiss the case. The Supreme Court sent it back down to the lower court. Conceivably, the district judge could maybe create a little difficulty for them in actually getting it dismissed. That'll be interesting to watch. But Trump could just pardon him and he'd get the same results. I don't understand.
Well, I think the key word, as you mentioned, Gary, is unprecedented. These are things we've never seen. We've got, but between the three of us, over 100 years of experience, I've been on the bench. I've never seen this. If you came to me when I was a circuit judge and say, "Oh, by the way, Judge, that sentence Mr. Smith served a year ago, we want to dismiss the case."
Yeah,
I would think as a judge, I would have no jurisdiction to do that.
Right. And it's just mind-boggling, really, that they are doing the things that they're doing. And the Supreme Court, once again, in an unsigned opinion, said, "Yeah, we're sending it back down to the court," almost telling the court to go ahead and dismiss it.
Well, did the three quote liberal justices dissent?
No, it was one of those shadow docket things where it's just but
even with a shadow docket, you have the justices can write a dissenting opinion. So that's why I'm kind of like wondering where's the dissent, because I can't imagine that they would have agreed with that.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, our good friend Trump is seeking billions of dollars. These are all just kind of the minnows in the pond. The big money is Trump, who's a convicted felon, saying he wants billions from the Department of Justice.
Well, even Trump realized when he was speaking one time that could be a conflict of interest. He goes, "It's almost like I'm negotiating with myself." Maybe that's Trump's limit of, and I also had read that, even in the Justice Department, they're struggling how to deal with that. Of course, number one, he's not entitled to anything. But number two, in the event that conceivably that he was, the way to do that is to just put it off to the next administration or appoint an independent counsel.
Yeah. How about call your first witness, Mr. Trump? I've proved the damages that you have and in front of a jury, and we'll see if you're entitled to anything.
He doesn't do well during a jury. I'm kind of looking forward, since he's made all this money now, he should have no problem paying off E. Jean Carroll's civil judgment.
Well, the second one that was a big one. The case he also stormed out during the closing arguments of that second trial. Back on the Attorney General issue, Todd Blanche, who's the acting Attorney General, and I think we all agree will be no different, and if anything more sycophantic. These are personal lawyers that Trump had hired years ago. I'll take you. I mean, there's any doubt that there's not going to be any real wall. But he's acting Attorney General. I think Trump understands that he's going to have trouble getting someone like Todd Blanche through the Senate. You have to be approved through the Senate Judiciary Committee. That's for that
Did you hear his
post.
quote yesterday?
Oh, it's about how much he loves Trump.
Yeah.
Is that real love? Or is that agape love or real
I
love?
love that man. I love you, Mr. President.
He said, I don't know whether you, I did hear it this morning, whether you keep me on or you don't keep me on, whether you kick me out the door, whatever you do with me what you will, in the words of Jesus Christ.
Or I've been honored to serve here. I'll be honored to do whatever you ask me to do. And if you can send me to another post, I'll just say thank you. I love you, Mr. President.
And if you send me off to Siberia, I'll say thank you as well. What I'm wondering about any potential bar complaints filed against Blanche for a conflict of interest. There has to be so many conflicts of interest, especially when he went down and interviewed Maxwell.
Well, that's what he did there was clearly wrong, and there's a transcript of that, and all he cared about there was covering Trump's ass. But procedurally, I don't think you can be acting Attorney General for an unlimited period of time. I don't think you can have an acting Attorney General for the next 3 years. So I believe there are time limits, just as there are for acting U.S. attorneys, which we've talked about.
Yeah, that's what got Alina Habba suspended, because she had never gone through the confirmation process that was required. Now, one last thing about the Bondi ethical complaint. In Florida, what happens with the enforcement of ethical guidelines against lawyers is that it's handled by the Florida Supreme Court. They're the ultimate the people who determine what the punishment should be. This Supreme Court in Florida is very Republican. I think all of them now have been appointed. Maybe there's one that hasn't been appointed by Ron DeSantis.
One hasn't.
But the rest of them are all staunch Republicans. And when this first complaint was filed, it's very notable that there were 2 former Supreme Court justices who were complaining about Pam Bondi's conduct. And that's before they've gone back to amend it. So it's going to be interesting to see if the Florida Supreme Court actually stands up and looks at this in a neutral fashion, the way they should, or whether they're going to be politicized the way the Supreme Court of the United States has become.
Well, and the fact that you did have 2 former state Supreme Court justices, including, as I mentioned, Pariente, I forget who the second one was. That's
I think
incredible.
it was Quince, but I'm not sure. Quince or Lewis.
They often get, the Florida bar gets a number of frivolous complaints, lawyers fighting with each other, but I've never seen a situation like this where you've had former judges of the Supreme Court weigh in on this. And there are many other prominent attorneys in the state of Florida who weighed in on this.
Prosecutors and others, yeah.
And that's very, very unusual.
You were asking a question about how long Blanche could serve. So if my AI is correct, which I just looked up, an acting U.S. Attorney General can serve for 210 days, or during the time that the president submits a nomination to the Senate, while the nomination's pending in the Senate. So it could be more than 210 days, because Trump could submit a nominee. They could be turned down. Then Trump would have to submit another nominee. They could be turned down. So the acting Attorney General could stay in there conceivably for the remainder of his presidency.
And the bottom line, though, is regardless of who's in that chair for Trump, the Department of Justice has been gutted in all fashion. And it is nothing more than a law firm for the president. Again, that's never happened.
And what happens? How long does it take when a new administration takes over to get it back to the respect that it typically had?
Okay. All right. Well, we're coming up to a break, so we'll go ahead and take that and we'll be back on the Voice of Reason with more of the issues that conservatives never want you to hear about.
Hey everyone, it is Brandy Joy with the Brandy Joy Joyride. Feel free to hop in and have a good time with us every Thursday from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. This show is brought to you by One Unit, dedicated to bringing people together, letting your voices be heard, and of course, we're here to entertain you, upbuild you, inspire you, and even hear from you. It's every Thursday. Tune in to 106.1 FM, Brandy Joy Joyride, and we will hear from you, and let's have some fun.
You're listening to the Voice of Reason on the Tan Talk Radio Network.
The following is a customer review of Dimmitt Chevrolet Clearwater.
Dimmitt Chevrolet Clearwater has been in business for over 100 years. That means they've had over a century to refine the art of scamming their customers. And boy, have they mastered the craft. When I went to Dimmitt to buy a used EV, the first con they ran on me was to tell me I had 3 days to back out of any deal I made. Turned out to be a total lie. Second con was to push me into financing the car when I wanted to pay cash. That way they could sell the loan and make more money on me. Because they didn't see me as a customer to whom they would sell a car at a fair price and treat honestly, they saw me as a mark they could grift to the fullest. They even stole my $4,000 federal tax rebate. It's amazing they didn't find a way to steal the car back from me after they sold it to me. Dimmitt screwed me every way, including up and down, because I had mistakenly assumed Dimmitt Chevrolet Clearwater was a reputable business. So remember, if you shop Dimmitt, you'll say, damn it.
Don't turn it off now. You need this stuff. Tampa Bay's Tan Talk Radio Network.
Welcome back to the Voice of Reason. I'm Gary Gibbons, along with my co-hosts Kevin Carey and Gary Dolgen. And we're going to listen to Sheldon Whitehouse, one of our favorites on this show, senator from Rhode Island, who gives some predictions about who he thinks might be next on the chopping block in the Trump administration.
I predicted after Noam was fired that Bondi would be next. Now I'm predicting that Kash Patel will be next. Why is that? Well, first of all, there's all the jets and the partying. He may not have a bedroom in his jet, but it's still not a good look. The second is that he's a bumbler and so often makes rookie errors when he gets involved in investigative stuff. He's just in over his head, and the mistakes are telling. The third, and the biggest, is that there are multiple lawsuits brought by FBI agents whom he has fired, and he's going to have to start answering questions in those lawsuits. He's going to have to start being deposed, being under oath, and responding to really capable lawyers. He's not going to be good at that. It won't go well, and it's going to leave a big mess. So whoever the next attorney general is can look forward to a big mess from the FBI director unless they get rid of him first.
Yeah, we've seen the firings that have happened that have been solely on political grounds. You investigated, you were told to investigate Trump in connection with the January 6th insurrection, or you were told to investigate him about the documents that he took down to Mar-a-Lago. They were just told to work on that case by their superiors, and they did that. But that's cause enough for them to be fired by this administration, and that's not what the law says. You have to have grounds to, actual malfeasance or misfeasance in office, and you have an opportunity to prove that you have been fired illegally and all that. None of that has happened. They were just cut, and they rightly have said, you know what? I've spent my career doing this, and I'm not going to just walk away from it. I didn't do anything wrong.
Well, I agree with most of what Senator Whitehouse said, but the last thing he said about depositions, I would think that Patel would have to testify whether he's FBI director or not. The issue about the plane and the bedroom, I think that's the type of thing that you could see Trump firing him about, because Trump doesn't like when people are living off the, fancy schmancy life. Trump likes that lifestyle. He likes to get away with everything and be corrupt, but he doesn't like when he perceives that somebody else under him, who's not as important as him, who he's appointed, is trying to pull shenanigans that Trump would pull.
It's like, hey, did you see that bedroom that Kristi Noem had on her plane? That's nicer than the one that's on Air Force One.
Where she's spending
gotta
time
go.
with Corey Lewandowski because her husband has some personal issues.
Well, it's ironic again. You could never have a more sycophantic, kissing ass cabinet in the history, and yet it doesn't do any good. In fact, it does just the opposite. I mean, Patel was never qualified to be in this position to begin with, and then what Trump cares about is being embarrassed. What happened with Patel with the Olympics? He flies over there. He lies about the reason for the trip. He goes to the Olympics, then he shows up. He's in the locker room, drinking beer like he was the goalie or something. It was silly. It was embarrassing. So for Trump, it's all about ratings and what you're doing embarrassing me. So I think Patel, if you had a beer game, you mentioned about hold my beer, who'd be next? I think the former congresswoman from Hawaii is probably close to being in that mix too.
I mean, here he is, a public official, and he's in the locker room acting, like, I guess, your ultimate sports fantasy, getting to hang out with the championship team and pouring beer on everyone. And he's the FBI director. It's just so crazy. And he was being made fun of. He looks silly.
Well, my understanding is the players or the coaches going, who's this clown who's in here? And he's, by the way, again, he lied about his reason for going. So he was on the dime, the taxpayer. It wasn't private money. The taxpayers paid for that trip to go watch the Olympics.
So maybe he's going to the Super Bowl next.
Well, if he is indeed the next one that's fired, it'll be a first for Trump because he really likes to fire women mostly. Noem, Bondi. They've said that what's her
who's
name?
Her name escapes me, from Hawaii. Who's the she was the one down in Georgia.
Yeah, she's in charge of our national security, and we can't remember her
well,
name.
there is a female labor secretary who's had some issues. Did Trump appoint a single African American to the cabinet, or
I don't
Hispanic?
believe so.
I just wonder about that.
You say she's had some issues. Her husband is banned.
Tulsi Gabbard.
Tulsi
is,
Gabbard
of course,
is
the one we're talking about. Is on thin ice.
I was talking about the labor secretary.
You say some issues. She's had an affair with a subordinate. Her husband's been banned from the labor building, because of sexual harassment charges. She would have been gone 5 minutes ago, or should have been gone. I mean, she's probably the one who most should be thrown out. But I think the only reason she's not is because people don't even know who the Secretary of Department of Labor is. It's a very low visibility position.
Well, especially in a Trump administration, they don't care about labor.
And the other women that he's promised things to and then reneged on. Look at Elise Stefanik, who was again just kissed his butt as much as she possibly could when she was in Congress. And she said, I'm not going to run because he's going to appoint me to be the UN ambassador. Well, and then, Mike Walsh, who was the guy who let the reporter from the Atlantic get on a signal chat they released the war plans for that bombing raid. He gets appointed to be the UN ambassador, and Stefanik is I guess, gardening at home. I don't know what's going on with her. And then Kristi Lake, he made her in charge of Voice of America and said,
Carrie Lake.
Carrie Lake. Yeah, excuse me. And go blow it up, And well, now a judge has come back in and said, no, you can't do that. So she'll probably be fired because she didn't accomplish that. And who's the Linda McMahon, the wrestling woman, that
education
in charge
secretary.
of.
She looks like a wrestler.
Yeah, she was told again, destroy the Department of Education and work yourself out of a job. So all of the processes for appointing women are never in any kind of important position.
But there is one woman who Trump really does respect, put her in the most important position, and she's probably a big reason he's president again, and that's his chief of staff, Susie Wiles, who is the daughter of the late Pat Summerall, the famous football broadcaster. But Susie Wiles gave that great, interesting interview where she said a lot of stuff, including that Pam Bondi was like her sister, but she sure did take a big whiff on the Epstein files. And she said that Trump, although he doesn't drink, has the characteristics of an alcoholic.
That's called a dry drunk. By
Her
the way.
dad was an alcoholic,
But
and she
Trump,
that's correct.
Trump is not getting rid of her, at least not now, and he truly does depend on her and respect her.
Because she doesn't speak truth to power. She lets him do whatever he wants to do. That's what the inside people are saying. There's never any pushback.
There was a press conference that Trump gave last week that was a little humorous, and he said, unlike most presidents, I'll allow you to ask me any questions, including anyone want to ask about sex. And there was an audio, we can't play it because it's more visual, of Jon Stewart saying, okay, and he pulls out the Epstein files. We got a lot of questions we want to ask you about sex. But we're in the middle of a war, and we have a president who actually says that. Anyone have any questions that want to ask me about sex? People are dying, and that's what's on his mind. He just
I missed that one.
Well, you can Google Jon Stewart. It's hilarious, but it's hilarious but true. It's not an AI production. That's exactly what Trump said. But this cabinet, Gary, is just there's lack of competency. There's no ability to really be addressing any issues. It's crisis management after crisis management, and when the biggest question seems to be who's going to be next, and when it's only been a little bit over a year of this administration, that's not positive. Yeah,
and sadly, that is really the only backstop to a president that really has, if it's Trump or anybody else, if they lose their mental faculties, they have a stroke, there's some reason to remove them for health reasons, or he let's just say last week he was talking about, dropping nuclear weapons. That would be totally off the chain and something that would make any normal cabinet say, wait a minute, we need to really have a look at and see whether this guy is functioning properly or not. And instead, you've got J.D. Vance that would have to initiate that. What makes you think that he would ever do it under the 25th Amendment? And then that cabinet, every cabinet meeting that you see, the last 3 hours because they all take 5 or 10 minutes to praise dear leader about how wonderful he is and how everything that he's doing is the best that's ever happened in this country. Those are the people that we as Americans would be relying upon to actually say, hey, you're nuts, you got to get out of here. And they're never going to do it.
Gary, I can't wait until J.D. Vance, who's going to run for president, right? What hurt Harris, you remember the question asked her, would you have done anything differently than Joe Biden? And she said nothing. She said no, and that really hurt her badly. Can you believe when J.D. Vance is asked the question, would you have done anything differently than Trump? And he's going to be faced with that question.
That is going to be
good luck
fascinating
with that question.
Because there are reports that he was against going into Iran. But here's the fantasy question. We could spend a lot of time on this, but when you bring up the 25th Amendment, I often ask people, would you rather Vance be president today and have him have the power of incumbency in the 2028 election? Or would you rather Trump serve out his term so that people are really angry then and you're running against his record in 2028? That's my question to a lot of people, and it provokes interesting discussions.
Well, the incumbency didn't help Gerald Ford too much in 1976, so I hear what you're saying.
That is true.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see you thinking about that. What would you want J.D. Vance to
I don't want J.D. Vance to be in
president?
charge of, a little league team, much less
that's not
the security of the United States.
The question was, would you rather have J.D. Vance or Donald Trump as president?
Neither. And then who would Vance would get to appoint a vice president?
He would, which would require majority confirmation by both the House and the Senate, and if the Democrats control at least one of those, he'd have to appoint a semi-reasonable person.
Well, Trump's not going away. He's not going anywhere. He regardless. There's nothing that he would do or say that the cabinet would invoke the 25th Amendment.
Nor would Congress impeach him.
Correct.
This Congress.
He's not going away. So that's a theoretical discussion.
He may eat one too many Big Macs.
Well, I don't wish poor health on anybody. He certainly doesn't have a healthy lifestyle, nor does he exercise. But the broader issue to me is at some point this Republican Party needs to envision a post-Trump world where it can maybe start getting an axis back of a sense of what they're about. Fiscal responsibility. They've been in this cult for about 10 years, 12 years now, which they need at some point get out of.
Well, they won't, because Trump won't let them.
But when he's gone, when he's gone, he won't have any power. When Trump has no power or leverage, no one's going to care about Trump.
Well, yes, but they're going to have to start talking about that post-Trump while he still is in office. And, even when he was out of office, people were bowing down to him within the Republican Party. But that may have been because there was a possibility of him coming back. It will be interesting to see what influence he has when he departs office.
Well, my point is, I hope it's an opportunity for the Republican Party to reestablish what it stands for. I, as a strong Democrat, have no problem having I think it's helpful to have and healthy to have opposing party and have some real debate, which we don't have. We've had a cult.
When's the last time we had people in Congress actually debating issues? They don't. They never pass a budget. They go on these continuing resolutions.
Absolutely right, Gary.
And then they pass bills through reconciliation where you cram it down the other party's throat and use the vice president to break the tie in the Senate.
Well, Joe Biden did pass the most bipartisan legislation of any president since Johnson.
Yeah, and a lot of that has been clawed back by this Congress. A lot of those monies that were appropriated, or the president has through his Department of Management and Budget, Russ Vogt, they feel like they can just cancel anything internally and say, no, we're not going to use that money for that purpose.
Well, at least many federal judges have put a stop to that.
Yeah. Well, let's hope. Well, we thankfully only have a few months left of Ron DeSantis.
Less than 9.
But who's counting, right?
You mean Meatball Ron? Or the Sanctimonious?
Well, what I can't get over is the fact that he just loves to give away other people's money. And, nothing is more emblematic of that than what he's done down in Miami. There's some state-owned land in downtown Miami, 3 acres, I think, that was part of a school, a college down there. And of course, DeSantis wants to control all of the colleges and all of the people that run the colleges. He's decided that we should just give that land to Trump, and so he could have a spot for his library. But what would be there, Kevin?
A huge skyscraper.
Well, I think it's going to be a hotel casino, maybe, where you can make more money. It's not going to be where Robert Caro on Lyndon, goes to Lyndon Johnson's library and has, gone through all these papers and wrote these wonderful books about the Johnson administration. It's not going to be that library. It's going to be a way to make money. And yes, just giving away state property for whatever he wants. And we do think, DeSantis is going to be out of a job. I think has strong motivation to kiss our president's tail, so to speak, to maybe get a job for the time thereafter. I think he's given up the thought that his wife is going to be the next governor. I think that's thanks to Hope Florida. At least that's been some positive of Hope Florida, is you don't hear anything about Casey DeSantis being governor anymore.
Well, the interesting thing is he's not even endorsing his lieutenant governor.
Yeah.
And of course, very thankful that he appointed his lieutenant governor that opened up the Senate District 14 race in Tampa. We got a Democrat in there by 400 votes. So it just shows that every vote counts. And a Democrat became mayor of Boca Raton by winning by 1 vote. So these special elections matter.
Well, there'll be an autopsy of the DeSantis administration, the 8 years, just like there'll be ultimately an autopsy of the Trump administration. And there's a lot of terrible things that have gone on in this administration, corruption, as well as, the Attorney General says he's not going to follow some laws. We talked about that last week. Why that got a very competent state attorney removed, Andrew Warren, here in the Tampa Bay area.
Yeah, he was also the chief of staff for DeSantis and was appointed as attorney general. And this Hope Florida thing, he stormed out of a press conference yesterday. Apparently, James Uthmeyer. Because people were starting to ask questions. So, well, the guy's running for election in November as Attorney General, and people have a right to know what's in that report, that Hope Florida report, about what he did.
Well, he orchestrated the removal of Andrew Warren and claimed that Andrew wasn't enforcing laws, which I don't believe was true. And yet here he is saying, I'm not going to enforce law.
He has said on the record, I will not enforce this law because I believe the U.S. Supreme Court will ultimately overrule.
Yeah.
That's not
his job.
That's not his job to predict what may happen down the road. In fact, his job is just the opposite and is much worse than anything that Andrew Warren allegedly did. But now, Uthmeyer, if you look at the investigation, which has, to the credit of some of the Republicans in the state House, they have done, his fingerprints are all over the Hope Florida issue, all over it.
And the other issue of DeSantis giving stuff away, or seeming to want to give state-owned property away, there have been a couple of land swaps that got discovered by reporters and leaked, that got undone, thankfully, before they happened, where he was trying to give valuable state-owned land to, a developer in exchange for something next to the developer's pending, existing golf course, so that they could expand on state land that otherwise had been conservation land. And now, with the Tampa Bay Rays looking to relocate to Tampa, he's swooped in again to Hillsborough College, formerly Hillsborough Community College, that has a large tract of land across from Raymond James Stadium. And this group that owns the Rays now, the developer from Jacksonville, is a close DeSantis ally, has made huge contributions to DeSantis's campaigns and PACs. And he's hurrying up this whole process, trying to say, we got to go. We got to do all this. Here's the land. This is the best place to put it. It's including, well, what about all the people that go to Hillsborough Community College? What's it going to cost the taxpayers to rebuild all that? There's also a building out there where people renew their driver's licenses that the county operates under, that again would have to be rebuilt using tax dollars to do that, when all of these facilities are perfectly fine.
Well, the prior ownership of the Rays were not strong political allies with DeSantis. The current is now, as a strong Rays fan. It's a challenging question if you're a strong Rays fan, but you have to look at the public interest here. And I think the majority of people don't want to see billionaires being subsidized, despite how much they love the Rays. And it all goes back to the Bucks back in 1996 getting the benefit, a large benefit of that community investment tax.
Well, I agree. When you talk about DeSantis, it is very noteworthy if you observe, if you're paying attention, that he's been governor now. This is his 8th year as governor, and he's never gotten involved with pushed hard for this issue with keeping the Rays in the Tampa Bay area. And now, because of the change in ownership, that's the first time he's stepped up. And they're talking about having a county commission vote within a couple weeks in I think May or late April. I know Ken Hagan is, who I know Ken well. Ken's a very able politician. He's pushing hard for this right now.
I think though but the county attorney is researching whether it perhaps could be illegal for this money to be used, because when the referendum was passed, it was sold as not being used for stadiums.
Well, having gone last night to the brand new Tampa, the Tropicana field, I think that's a perfectly fine place to play Major League Baseball into the indefinite future, not just the next 3 years.
Well, we'll see. They haven't released any of the documents on that stuff yet, and so it's hard to figure out exactly what the proposed deal is. But everybody watch. If they're pushing really fast, it's really because Ron is trying to make this deal happen, regardless of what people want.
So let your city council members and county commission members know your opinion.
Yeah. All right. So we're almost out of time. We're ready for our quote of the day, and it's from the infamous lawyer Clarence Darrow, who said, "I've never killed a man, but I've read many obituaries with great pleasure." Join us again next Thursday morning at 9 o'clock for another edition of The Voice of Reason. I'd like to thank my co-hosts Kevin Carey and Gary Dolgen. This is Gary Gibbons reminding you that if the statement seems a little too implausible to be true, don't believe it just because a conservative said it.
Make them prove it.
WTAN Clearwater,
FM 106.1,
WDCF Dade City,
FM 102.3.
Listen.
This is CBS News on the Hour, your home for original reporting.
I'm Cammie McCormick. The ceasefire with Iran has gone from fragile to shaky, with Iran insisting that Israel is violating the agreement by striking Hezbollah targets in Lebanon. CBS's Elizabeth Palmer reports this weekend's direct talks could be at stake.
Fortunately, they haven't said we're going to start shooting again, but they have said, you better cut this out. We want to see an end to the attacks on Hezbollah, or we will not come to Pakistan to start talking with the United States, those negotiations that are supposed to be being led by Vice President Vance.
Authorities say more than 200 people were killed in Israeli strikes on Lebanon yesterday. Britain's Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper.
We want the ceasefire extended to cover Lebanon. And frankly, I think this is about security of Israel as well as the security of Lebanon and the security of the whole of the Middle East.
President Trump's meeting with the NATO Secretary General yesterday did not appear to appease him. He's still angry at allies for not assisting in the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Correspondent Nancy Cortez.
The Wall Street Journal is reporting that the White House is now considering pulling U.S. troops out of some NATO countries that the president is angriest at and moving them elsewhere.
Retired Admiral and University of Syracuse professor Robert Murrett.
The NATO alliance is vital. And there's no question that it's been damaged just a little bit based upon some of the dynamics that have taken place over the last year or so. But I think it's going to recover.
The cash-strapped Postal Service says it will suspend employer payments for a pension program. Michael Wallace has that.
The agency announced it will temporarily stop making $200 million payments every other week for its employer contributions to the federal employees' retirement system. The Postal Service's chief financial officer says there will be no immediate impact to its current or future retirees. The suspension of those payments should save the cash-strapped agency about $2.5 billion this fiscal year.
U.S. applications for unemployment benefits rose last week. Oil prices are climbing back toward $100 a barrel. And CBS's Jill Schlesinger doesn't expect much change at the pump for some time.
I wish I could tell you the price at the pump would go down immediately. That's not going to happen. It's going to take a couple of weeks to actually see gas prices come down. And again, predicated on the fact that nothing flares up again in the days ahead. But what we do know is, as we say in the biz, we see prices at the pump. They go up by an elevator, they go down by the stairs.
On Wall Street at this hour, stocks are lower. The Nasdaq off by nearly 18 points. The Dow is lower by 120 points. This is CBS News.
It's one of the most successful law and justice programs in television history that continues to uncover the truth. 48 Hours, Saturday on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
Sun and Fun is celebrating the red, white, and blue at 52. Join us this April 14th through the 19th as we celebrate America's 250th birthday and 52 years of epic events at Sun and Fun.